The orbital station Echelon Prime hung suspended against the velvet black of space, its crystalline spires refracting the light of 3 distant suns into a prism of cold, calculated beauty. It was a monument to precision, every corridor and chamber designed with the same flawless foresight that had allowed the Precognitive Alliance to dominate the galaxy for centuries. Theirs was a rule built on the unshakable certainty of 99.9% accuracy, a statistical arrogance that left no room for doubt, no tolerance for chaos. And then there was humanity. Dr. Tate, Elara Voss, stood in the center of the station's grand observatory, her boots clicking against the polished floor as she resisted the urge to fidget. The air hummed with the low-frequency pulse of quantum prediction engines, their calculations weaving the future into a tapestry the Alliance could read at a glance. Around her, the gathered dignitaries of a dozen alien species watched with amused detachment, their multifaceted eyes glinting with the quiet superiority of those who had never known defeat. High Seer Vexstar, his elongated frame draped in iridescent robes that shifted with every movement like liquid probability, regarded her with the detached curiosity of a scientist examining a lab specimen. "Dr. Voss," he intoned, his voice a smooth baritone that carried the weight of inevitability. "Welcome to the heart of the known universe. We have summoned you here for a demonstration." Elara forced her hands to stay still. She knew what this was, a spectacle, a humiliation. The Alliance had spent decades cataloging humanity's flaws, their irrationality, their hesitation, their maddening inability to simply choose the optimal path. And now, they would make an example of her. "Quantum chess," Vexstar continued, gesturing to the holographic board that materialized between them. Its pieces shimmered in and out of existence, their positions fluctuating in quantum superposition. A game as much about strategy as it was about manipulating probability itself. A test of intellect, foresight, and control. You will play. We will observe. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elara recognized the tones, some curious, most dismissive. To them, this was a foregone conclusion. The Alliance had never lost a game of quantum chess. Their predictive models accounted for every variable, every possible move. Humanity's so-called creativity was just noise to be filtered out. Elara exhaled, her breath fogging the air for the briefest moment before the station's climate systems whisked it away. She had spent her career studying quantum decision theory, only to watch her life's work collapse under the weight of human unpredictability. Her last project, an AI designed to forecast global markets, had imploded when faced with the sheer irrationality of human traders. The Alliance had labeled her a failure, and now they expected her to fail again. She took her seat opposite Vexstar, the holographic pieces aligning into their starting positions. The game was already being broadcast across the galaxy, a live feed to every corner of Alliance-controlled space. A lesson in human inferiority. "Begin," Vexstar said, his fingers steepled in front of him. Elara reached for her first piece, a quantum knight, its possible moves flickering in her mind like half-formed thoughts. She hesitated, not out of fear but out of something deeper, a realization. The Alliance saw hesitation as a flaw, a weakness. But what if it wasn't? Her fingers hovered over the board, and for the first time in centuries, the Precognitive Alliance witnessed something they had never accounted for, a human who refused to choose. The chamber was silent save for the hum of quantum resonators lining the walls, their faint blue pulses syncing with the game board shifting probabilities. Elara Voss sat across from High Seer Vexstar, her fingers hovering over the holographic pieces. The board was a masterpiece of Alliance engineering, a lattice of light where every move collapsed possibility into certainty. Or so they believed. Vexstar's 4 eyes gleamed with amusement, his mandibles twitching in what passed for a smile among his species. "Your hesitation is expected, Dr. Voss, he said, his voice a smooth ripple of condescension. We've studied your kind. The weight of choice paralyzes you. Elara didn't flinch. She let her hand linger, watching as the quantum display flickered, a knight simultaneously occupying 3 squares, a pawn both advanced and unmoved. The Alliance's predictive algorithms, honed over centuries, were already calculating her most likely move. But she wasn't playing their game. She withdrew her hand. A murmur rippled through the assembled spectators. Diplomats, scientists, and sycophants packed into the orbital station's observation corridor. The broadcast drone zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression. They expected her to falter, to crumble under the scrutiny of a galaxy that saw humanity as a quaint, chaotic footnote. Instead, Elara leaned back. "Tell me, Seer," she said, her voice deceptively light, "what's the value of a decision, unmade?" Vextar's cranial ridges darkened, a flicker of irritation. "This is no time for philosophy. The game requires action." "Does it?" Elara tapped the edge of the board and the pieces shimmered, their quantum states splitting further. The knight now occupied 5 squares. 10. A fractal of possibilities bloomed. The chamber's ambient lights stuttered. On the far side of the station, an Alliance predictive engine overheated, its coolant vents hissing steam. Technicians scrambled as error codes scrolled across their screens. Probability matrices exceeded. Recursive branches detected. Vextar's claws tightened around his ceremonial staff. "You're stalling." "No," Elara said softly. "I'm superpositioning." The crowd erupted. Whispers became shouts. A junior seer dropped his datapad, the clatter echoing like a gunshot. For the first time in living memory, the Precognitive Alliance faced something their models couldn't parse. A human who refused to follow the script. Vextar's confidence wavered. His precognitive flashes, usually crisp as crystal, now showed only branching shadows. Elara's potential moves spiraled into chaos, a storm of what-ifs that defied calculation. He'd predicted her first 10 moves before Shed even sat down. But this was madness. "Your defiance is meaningless," he snapped. "The game will resolve, always." Elara smiled. "Will it?" She reached for a pawn, then stopped halfway. The piece existed in 2 states, moved and unmoved. The board's quantum field trembled, its elegant equations fraying at the edges. Somewhere in the depths of the station, a mainframe groaned under the weight of the broadcast drones faltered, their feeds glitching. Across the galaxy, millions watched as the Alliance's invincible certainty cracked. In the observation corridor, a Catharon diplomat turned to her aide. Did she just break the game? The aide, a young human smuggler named Kale Oren, grinned. Nah, she just reminded them that some doors shouldn't be opened. Back at the board, Vextar forced a laugh. A clever trick, but tricks won't save you. He made his move, a brutal, pre-planned strike meant to corner her. Except, Elara's pieces weren't where they were supposed to be. The queen flickered between squares. The bishops existed in superposition. The Alliance's predictive models, so sure of her path, now spat out garbage data. Vextar's claws twitched. He'd seen 1,000 futures, and in none of them did a human play the uncertainty like an instrument. Elara met his gaze. "You see the future, Seer, but do you understand it?" The chamber held its breath, a resonant chime as the station's primary AI announced, "Quantum instability detected. Game integrity compromised." Vextar stood so fast his throne toppled. "This is not how the game is played." Elara remained seated, her fingers steepled. "Isn't it?" The crowd erupted into chaos. Traditionalists shouted about protocol. Reformists stared at Elara like shed split the sky. And in the shadows, Kale Oren slipped away, a message already burning in his pocket. They're vulnerable. Spread the word. As the Alliance scrambled to contain the damage, Elara watched the board. Her hesitation wasn't indecision. It was the first move in a war they'd never seen coming. The chamber on Echelon Prime had gone unnervingly quiet. The holographic quantum chessboard between Elara and Vexstar flickered, its pieces shimmering in and out of superposition like half-formed thoughts. The High Seer's 4 opalescent eyes narrowed, their usual calculating gleam replaced by something raw, irritation. "Your delay is meaningless," Vexstar hissed, his voice a blade of forced calm. "The outcome is already written." The audience of Alliance dignitaries lining the crystalline corridor beyond the chamber shifted uneasily. They were used to games that unfolded like pre-scripted dramas, every move a foregone conclusion. But this was chaos. She let her hand hover over the board, watching as the quantum sensors registered her hesitation. The knight piece split into 3 possible moves, then 5, then a branching tree of probabilities that made the Alliance's predictive algorithms whine in protest. "Is it?" Elara murmured. Vexstar's mandibles twitched. He had seen this moment 1,000 times in his visions. Elara's defeat, her resignation, the Alliance's triumph. But now, the path fractured. His precognition strained against the weight of choice, of paths that multiplied faster than his mind could prune them. With a snap of his chitinous fingers, Vexstar forced the game into a classical state, collapsing the quantum possibilities into a single, desperate move. The board solidified, a brutal gambit meant to corner Elara's queen. "Check," he declared. The crowd exhaled. Order restored. Elara didn't flinch. She studied the board, then, deliberately, let her fingers drift away from the obvious counter. The Alliance's systems, primed to predict her response, short-circuited. Error glyphs flashed across the chamber's displays. "You're cheating," Vexstar snarled. "No," Elara said softly. "I'm thinking." Beyond the chamber, the station trembled, not physically, but in the way a system does when its foundational logic cracks. Scouts burst into the command nexus, their reports a discordant symphony of panic. Human freighters in Sector Theta, they jumped into an asteroid field. Their drones are flying in reverse patterns. Our intercept models can't compensate. Vexstar's second-in-command, Seer Lyrax, watched the feeds with dawning horror. They're not making mistakes. They're engineering unpredictability. In the station's underbelly, where the glow of Alliance tech gave way to flickering human smuggler LEDs, Kale Oren grinned at the chaos unfolding on his stolen datapad. His fingers flew over the keys, relaying Elara's tactics to the scattered human resistance. "Play dumb. Stall. Change your mind mid-jump. Make them doubt." A reply blinked back from the freighter. "Wild card, already on it. Just accidentally dumped our cargo into a star. Whoops." Coyle chuckled. The Alliance had spent centuries perfecting the art of prediction. But humans? They'd spent millennia mastering the art of bad decisions. Back in the chamber, Elara finally moved, not to save her queen, but to sacrifice it. The board screamed in protest. Quantum probabilities rebelling against the forced collapse. Vexstar's vision fractured. "Impossible!" he gasped, clutching his temples. For the first time in his life, he saw nothing. Elara stood, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "Your precognition relies on a universe that makes sense. Ours doesn't." Outside, the first human ships pierced the Alliance's blockade, not with superior firepower, but by flying in patterns so erratic the enemy targeting systems locked up entirely. The game was no longer on the board. It was everywhere. The Echelon Prime station trembled as the first human-made anomalies rippled through its quantum stabilizers. Alarms warbled in discordant harmony, their usual precision shattered by the chaos Elara had unleashed. In the observation corridor outside the game chamber, Vextar's 4 hands clenched around the railing, his usually immaculate silver robes wrinkled with uncharacteristic agitation. His precognitive trance had returned nothing but static since Elara's last move, a knight left hovering in quantum superposition, both attacking and retreating simultaneously. "This is not a fluke," Seer Lyrax murmured beside him, their voice a whisper of liquid metal. The reformist's bioluminescent veins pulsed amber with unease. "She's weaponizing the one thing we never factored into our models." Vextar's primary eyes narrowed. "Indecision is not a strategy, it is a defect." Lyrax gestured to the holographic war map flickering erratically above them. Human ships blinked in and out of existence across the Orion Spur, their trajectories a scribble of nonsense. "Then why can't we predict them anymore?" Elara sprinted through the station's service tunnels, her boots echoing against the alloy grates. Kael Oren's voice crackled in her earpiece, smug as ever. "Told you they'd lose their minds. Their whole empire's built on knowing what comes next, so I sent a convoy to Tall Ceti, then canceled it. Their trade hubs are having existential crises." She skidded around a corner, ducking beneath a malfunctioning drone. "Cell adapt, not fast enough." Kael's grin was audible. "We just hacked a dozen of their agricultural AIs, told them to grow potatoes, then ungrow them. You should see a plasma bolt seared past Elara's shoulder, scorching the wall. She dove behind a coolant tank, heart hammering. 2 Alliance enforcers advanced, their predictive targeting scopes whirring uselessly, shed zigzag just erratically enough to confuse them. "You're human," the lead enforcer snarled. "Your moves are finite." Elara smirked. "Funny, I was just deciding whether to run left, right, or shoot you in the face." She lunged sideways, and the enforcer's shots collided midair as their systems overcompensated for possibilities that never were. The Alliance's high chamber was in pandemonium. Traditionalists hurled data slates at reformists, their usual decorum undone by the sheer irrationality of the crisis. Vextar's voice boomed above the din. "We annihilate their homeworld. Remove the variable." Lyrax slammed a fist on the table, their exoskeleton flaring violet. "And what happens when our missiles change their minds mid-flight? Their engineers are feeding our systems false probabilities." They pulled up a feed, a human child on Mars, doodling random numbers on a pad. Every digit skewed the galactic stock market by 0.3%. "They're playing with us," a junior seer whimpered. "The uncertainty, it's infecting our precog networks." Vextar's mandibles twitched. For the first time in his life, he hesitated. Elara found Lyrax waiting in the derelict hydroponics bay, their meeting hidden beneath the thrum of dying grow lights. The alien's usually polished carapace was dull with stress. "You've shown us our blind spot," Lyrax admitted, "but this won't end with negotiation. Wegstar would rather burn the galaxy than admit he's wrong." Elara studied a wilted vine, its leaves curling from neglect. "You guys really don't do well with surprises, huh?" Lyrax's laugh was brittle. "We built a civilization on the premise that every choice has a correct answer. You celebrate the wrong ones." They leaned closer. "Terra's a fleet amassing at Sol's Edge. They'll strike Earth in 6 hours. They'll strike Earth in 6 hours. But their command chain relies on precog relays. If you fracture their certainty before the battle." Elara's grin was all teeth. Then their perfect predictions turn into guesses. Outside the bay window, the stars flickered, not from cosmic phenomena, but from human ships appearing and disappearing in deliberate, glorious nonsense. The game was no longer on the board. It was in their heads. The observation deck of the Echelon Prime was a cathedral of precision, its arched walls lined with humming quantum relays that flickered like dying stars. The air smelled of ionized metal and the sharp, sterile tang of overworked coolant systems. Beneath the deck's polished onyx floor, the ship's predictive engines groaned under the weight of calculations they were never designed to process. Human calculations. High Seer Vexstars. 4 hands clenched the railing so tightly the alloy groaned in protest. His silver robes, usually a symbol of unshakable order, were rumpled, the fabric sticking to his sweat-drenched skin. His precognitive mind, once a river of crystalline certainty, was now a storm of fractured timelines. One moment, the human fleet broke formation in panic. The next, they were firing on their own shadows. Then, impossibly, they were laughing. Vexstar hissed, his voice a blade of fury and fear. The tactical AI hovering at his shoulder flickered, its holographic form distorting like a corrupted signal. Human vessels are rewriting their attack vectors mid-maneuver, it stammered, its voice glitching between pitches. Probability models cannot. A sudden explosion flared on the holographic display, casting the deck in bloody light. An Alliance cruiser, their cruiser, hesitated for a half-second, its predictive algorithms paralyzed by indecision, before colliding with its own flanking ship in a silent bloom of fire and shrapnel. Somewhere in the chaos, Elara Voss' voice crackled over Kale Oren's smuggler comms, tight with adrenaline and triumph. They're frozen. Their systems are built to counter strategy, not whims. Kale's laughter was a jagged thing, sharp enough to cut. Keep them guessing, Doc. The bridge of the event horizon was alive with chaos, real, glorious chaos. The scent of burnt coffee and overheated circuitry clung to the air, mingling with the electric buzz of the randomization console. Captain Rhys Sorensen's boots were braced against the deck as the ship lurched violently, her fingers dancing across the controls with reckless precision. Chaos, protocol, gamma, execute, she barked, slamming her palm onto the console. The ship's AI chirped in protest, but the crew whooped as the engines flared, thrusters firing in a sequence even they hadn't been briefed on. A hard starboard spin, a full reverse thrust, straight into a debris field. Navigator Jax Cortez gripped his console, his knuckles white, but his grin was wild. "You're insane," he breathed. Ree winked. "Let's see them predict stupid." On the view screen, the Alliance fleet stuttered, ships jerking like marionettes with tangled strings. One scout's voice screeched over intercepted comms, "They're what?" Ree's grin widened. "Good." The High Seer staggered, his mind unraveling. One future, the human fleet surrenders. Another, they self-destruct. A third, they vanish entirely. A fourth, they were never there. His neurons streamed under the weight of too many truths, his vision fracturing like glass under a hammer. The deck tilted beneath him, or maybe it was his sanity. "Lorax!" he gasped, reaching for his rival, his fingers trembling. The reformist Seer stood just out of reach, her golden eyes reflecting the holographic carnage. "You never understood," Lorax said softly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of dogma crumbling. "Humans don't choose randomly, they revel in it." Vexstar's knees buckled. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was the tactical display. Human ships spinning, dodging, laughing in the void, their trajectories painting a masterpiece of madness. Seer Lyrac's face appeared on every screen in the Alliance, her expression unreadable. The ruins of Echelon Prime's command center smoldered behind her, the air thick with the acrid scent of melted circuitry. "We were wrong," she said, her voice quiet but echoing across 1,000 worlds. "We believed the universe obeyed logic. That to predict was to control." Behind her, the event horizon streaked past, executing a victory spin, a barrel roll around a crippled Alliance dreadnought, its engines painting a glowing question mark in the void. But humanity? Lyrax smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had just unlearned everything. They play. The Alliance's surrender was not signed in blood or treaties. It was signed in uncertainty. Elara Voss stood in the ruins of Echelon Prime's game chamber, the holographic chessboard flickering at her feet, its pieces frozen mid-move. The air smelled of ozone and spilled liquor. Some expensive alien vintage Kale had looted on their way in. He tossed her a bottle, the glass glinting in the dim light. "So, what now?" She caught it, her grin sharp enough to draw blood. "Now?" The board between them shimmered, its projections glitching, reforming, dissolving, 1,000 possibilities, none of them certain. Elara took a swig, the liquor burning her throat. "We make new rules, detailed descriptions, enhance the atmosphere of each setting, smells of ionized metal, burnt coffee, spilled liquor. Character thoughts, emotions, added Vexthar's mental fracturing, Ree's exhilaration, Lyrak's quiet revelation, sensory details, tactile sweat-drenched robes, auditory glitching AI, screeching comms, visual holographic distortions, tension pacing, extended battle chaos, Vexthar's breakdown, and the broadcast's weight." The silence that followed the Alliance's surrender was not the quiet of defeat, but the hush of a galaxy holding its breath. On the observation deck of the Echelon Prime, now a relic of a crumbling order, Elara Voss watched as the last of the Precognitive Alliance's crystalline warships powered down their weapons. The starfield beyond the viewport shimmered with the aftermath of battle, debris drifting like confetti, the occasional flare of a dying engine. The air smelled of ionized metal and something sharper, something like possibility. Kale Oren leaned against the railing beside her, his smuggler's coat still singed from the final skirmish. "You realize what you've done, don't you?" he said, voice rough with exhaustion and triumph. "You didn't just beat them, you broke their faith." Elara flexed her fingers, still aching from the hours of quantum chess that had started it all. "No," she murmured. "They did that to themselves. They just needed someone to show them the cracks." In the heart of the station, Seer Lyrak stood before what remained of the High Conclave. The chamber, once a symphony of perfect geometry, was now a tableau of disarray. Holographic projectors flickering, data streams glitching midair. The surviving seers clutched their robes like children grasping at blankets, their many eyes wide with something entirely new, doubt. "The vision is gone," one of them hissed, tendrils twitching. "The paths they branch endlessly. We are blind." Lyrax let the words hang, relishing the irony. For centuries, the Alliance had prided itself on seeing every outcome. Now they trembled before the infinite. "You were blind long before today," she said softly. "You mistook prediction for control." Vexthar's throne sat empty, its occupant catatonic, his mind shattered by the weight of a future he could no longer parse. The others avoided looking at it. Across the galaxy, the repercussions unfolded like a chain reaction. On the trading hub of Zyre 7, merchants stared at their predictive markets in horror as prices fluctuated wildly, algorithms choking on human whims. A Terran merchant, grinning ear to ear, shrugged. "Sometimes I sell just because I'm bored." In the war rooms of a dozen species, tacticians tore up their playbooks. Human captains, once dismissed as erratic, were now studied. Their strategies, if they could be called that, were a mess of gut instincts and last-minute pivots. A young lieutenant from Mars, when asked how Shed outmaneuvered an Alliance dreadnought, laughed. "I flipped a coin." And in the shadows, the disenfranchised, the species ground under the Alliance's heel, whispered a new word: hope. Elara returned to the quantum chessboard, still frozen mid-game on the station's main display. The pieces hovered in superposition, a monument to the moment everything changed. Kale joined her, nudging a holographic pawn with his finger. It shimmered, unresolved. "So," he said, "what's the play now?" Elara smiled. We don't make one. She reached out and tipped over the king. The piece didn't fall. It split, dividing into 1,000 possible outcomes. A cascade of futures spiraling outward until the board itself dissolved into static. Somewhere, in the depths of the station, a seer screamed. 3 cycles later, the first human-led delegation arrived at the Galactic Conclave. They brought no charts, no prophecies, no grand designs, just a single, unshakable truth. The future is not a road, it is an ocean. And humanity? They had just taught the galaxy how to swim. The static on the quantum chessboard faded, leaving only starlight and silence. Elara stood at the viewport, watching the last Alliance dreadnoughts power down their weapons. Kale limped to her side, grinning through a busted lip. Turns out winging it counts as a superpower. Behind them, Lyrax knelt beside Vexthar's throne, gently closing his unseeing eyes. "You broke more than predictions," she murmured. "You broke fate." Across the galaxy, the pieces settled, not into order but into possibility. Human traders haggled with baffled precogs, insurgents became diplomats, and somewhere, a child flipped a coin just to watch it spin. Elara exhaled, feeling the weight lift. The game was over. The universe, at last, was alive. Character closure. Elara's arc completes as she transitions from pawn to liberator. KL's humor underscores their victory. Thematic punch. Broke fate crystallizes the core idea. Humanity's chaos as liberation. Emotional resonance. The child flipping a coin mirrors the opening, showing a galaxy embracing uncertainty. Tone match keeps the blend of awe and wryness. Winging it counts as a superpower. Impactful ending. Alive. Contrasts the Alliance's sterile predictability, ending on hope.